about the bronze serpent. You'll see a couple of clips about that. And you have that, some of you I think already read the little story from character sketch about Hezekiah and how he recognized that as a problem. It's interesting that other kings before him hadn't. So, hope we open in prayer and we'll get started. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time we can share together and for this last year and learning out your word. I just pray that you'd help us today. So, a quick review then. So chapter 16, we talked about Korah. I was a kid, my mother-in-law, her name was Korah. But, you know, when you talk about rebellions, you know, you always think about Korah's rebellion. But the interesting thing, like we mentioned, that Korah's sons apparently survived for whatever reason. The Bible doesn't go into detail on it. That one guy speculated because of where the Levites there were situated. And Moses did give a warning, and maybe the mom said, okay boys, we're going. Dad, if you want to stay, you know, but he seems like a pretty stubborn guy. And each of them had censers with incense, kind of like, I was thinking, you know, kind of like you see if you go to a Catholic service, you know, they're walking down with the censers and having the incense around. Well, that didn't go over real big. And then Aaron told his boys, you know, to pick up all of the censers that were made out of brass or bronze, I forget, and then they hammered them into a covering of the altar. It's kind of a reminder, you know, oh yeah, that's the metal that Korah's clan used. So, but then the sixth murmuring takes place. It didn't take long. It was one day later, you know, and if the earth swallows up a bunch of guys, you know, you really can't blame it on Moses. But they did. And that didn't go over real big either. But once again, Moses, you know, prayed for him. You know, his patience is really remarkable. And it said Aaron runs to stand between the living and the dead. You know, remember, they're not in shorts. You know, they're in these long robes and he's in his priestly garment. That might have been a little bit of a chore to run. I mean, he had to lift up his, loin up his,
tuck it in the belt.
Tuck it in the belt, which might have been embarrassing too. So, but it's ironic that they rebelled, but God saves them again. You know, here's an example of grace. Chapter 17, this is where God aims to squash future rebellions by, okay, each of you guys, you bring your rod before, we're going to lay it before the tabernacle before the ark, and we're going to see what happens. And nothing happened to the 11, but Aaron's rod budded and bloomed and produced almonds. And that's a pretty hard trick to do. Remember, it was a dead wood. And the reaction to the miracle was a big impact. And I kidded, you know, there was no participation ribbon that day. You either won or you didn't. And so there were the three articles in the ark, the manna, the stone tablets, and Aaron's rod that budded. Which, once again, it doesn't seem to, you know, I can't imagine that it was a short little stick, little cane, but it fit in the ark. So, and sometimes when it says in the ark, it means before it.
How long is the ark?
Yeah.
Had to be
Well, the Bible does.
6 feet long.
Yeah, the Bible does give kind of some dimensions. So then, chapter 18 was not a lot of meat to it in the sense, but it does show that the Levites' responsibility about each different group had their job. Everybody knew what was expected of them, which is good. When there's no expectations, things usually end up in chaos. If you're working in a company and up at Elk River Electric, nobody knew what they were supposed to do that day. And the supervisors expect you to know, right, what to do that day. What are you doing? This is your 5th coffee break or whatever. Ken never did that.
No,
No. And then chapter 19 was that red heifer, which is, I don't assume to know all that's involved in it. I know people have written a lot about that. I know Watchman Nee wrote about it a lot. It's the only female offering noted in the Bible, female animal. And that's about purification. And remember, they would burn it completely, take the ashes, mix it in the water, and then sprinkle it on people. I don't think we've done that lately. We should talk to Steve about that. And then chapter 20 is where Miriam dies. You know, she's kind of a mystery gal, I mean, in some ways. We don't hear a lot about her. I mean, the beginning, I mean, she was pretty faithful. You know, we're going to see a little clip here about, which is extra biblical, about Moses going to meet with her when she's on quarantine out in the wilderness. I think it's a little bit of a touching scene. The Bible doesn't say that, but it's not unbiblical, I don't think. And then this is the last chapter where they're really, or one of the last chapters where they're really talking about the wilderness wandering those 40 years. We don't have a lot of detail. Shaver and McGee said, you know, the reason we don't have a lot of detail is because when you're kind of out of God's will, there's not a lot of detail to report. And but they're back now at Kadesh Barnea. That's where the spies were. And now we have the 7th murmuring. And this is a sad story, which we're going to get into in today's lesson, where Moses loses it. And understandably. So let's watch this little clip. And I think this is something that's probably copyrighted from what we've known in the past. So we'll chorus rebellion. But I thought that was, you know, probably a little bit that's unbiblical. Perhaps there is. My understanding was that she got healed right away, and it looked like she still had the symptoms there. But I think, you know, it's very possible that Moses went and brought her food. I mean, somebody had to for 7 days. And
Brotherly care for the sister.
right. And she was, in this anyway, and I think she probably was, I think she got the message. You know, I think all of us would. You know. Yeah, we're going to listen to you, God. And, but you think of all of the hardship and everything, and how that wore on the people. And when you're under stress, you probably say things and do things that you normally wouldn't do. At least me. So we're going to be in chapter 20 here of Numbers. And we're kind of overlapping a little bit of the review. So verses 12 through 13. Why doesn't somebody read 12 through 13, chapter 20 there?
Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe me, how would my me in the eyes of the children of Israel? Therefore, you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. This was the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel contended with the Lord, and he was hallowed among them.
It was a really clear instruction, and Moses didn't do it. And where it says, to whom much is given, much is required. And he knew a lot about God, and therefore he had a harsher judgment, I guess. But you think of the 40 years previously, if they had gone into the land at the first chance, none of this would have happened. And Sunday when I talked about Joshua and Caleb, I can't help but think that they felt like, and Moses too, I've had 40 years of my life snatched from me. Now, like Caleb and Joshua, they're in their 80s, and they're thinking, now we're going to start. But the interesting thing is Moses did finally reach the promised land, didn't he? On the Mount of Transfiguration, he got there. You wonder how that shook out up in heaven. Where, okay, Elijah, Moses, come forward. Okay, you're going down. Jesus. It's kind of hard to. And how did the disciples know that it was Elijah and Moses? I always kid, they had name tags, Hi, my name is. Probably Jesus told them afterwards. I don't think it says that, but that's a distinct possibility. So, verses 14 through 15. Here we have, so Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. This is what your brother Israel says. You know all the hardships that have overtaken us. Our fathers went down to Egypt, and we lived in Egypt many years. Had the Egyptians treated us, but they treated us badly. When we cried out to the Lord, he heard our voice, sent an angel, and brought us out of Egypt. Now look, we're here in Kadesh, a city on the border of your territory. Please let us travel through your land. We won't travel through any field or vineyard or drink any well water. We will travel the king's highway. We won't turn to the right or the left until we have traveled through your territory. Seems like a pretty reasonable request. And he plays on the history there. Hey, this is your brother, And it's interesting, he's saying, you know about everything that's happened to us. That wasn't a secret. It wasn't a secret to the people in Canaan either. That they had been in Egypt, they had gone through the Red Sea. Edom still held, or Esau's descendants still held a grudge. It seems like it. They didn't show any brotherly kindness there. They're saying, no way, Jose, you're not going through. And if you try it, we got an army. And you're going to regret it. So, but apparently they don't care, that it's a tough beats. So, and one of the things I was thinking is the character of their ancestor was ingrained in them, 400, 500 years later. It's a long time.
Wasn't it Edom, or whatever, Esau, that welcomed Joseph on the way back?
Well, you did, right.
It
It seems like he
a whole
made,
different characteristic of
yeah.
him.
But they still probably feel like, well, he got the birthright.
Well,
Yeah, it's true. But right, yes, Esau seemed to have a change when we looked at that he did come and, Jacob wasn't real trusting of him. He says, yeah, I'll go back with you, but, we're kind of slow, and then he took you the other way. So I don't know, but that's a good point. But
apparently his descendants didn't think about that, or remember that, or were told about that, or
Right.
whatever.
yeah, maybe the oral history kind of omitted that part.
Could be.
Yeah. They were just bringing up, you know what? you know what, at Jacob. And they're getting what they deserve in Egypt. So Edom sins because he's selfish. They're not going to share anything. Even though they promised that they wouldn't, eat the vineyards or anything. Now, it's interesting today, do we know anything about our Esau's descendants, noted anywhere? Their DNA is probably out there somewhere in the Arab world, but they're gone. And I forget who said it, that one of the proofs of the reliability of the Bible is that Israel's still here. And all these other countries are not. And other relatives of Abraham, they had the same deal. Moab and Ammon, they turned out to be enemies of Israel as well. Okay, so verses 18 through 22 says, "But Edom answered, 'You must not travel through our land, or we'll come out and confront you with the sword.' 'We will go on the main road,' the Israelites replied. 'And if we or our herds drink your water, we will pay its price. There will be no problem. Only let us travel through on foot.' And Edom insisted, 'You must not travel through.' And they came out to confront them with a large force of heavily armed people. Edom refused Israel to travel through their territory, and Israel turned away from them." I think later on God does judge Edom and Seir. Because I know there are battles later on with Edom, and they're defeated, I think, by David. So now, J. Vernon McGee, his opinion, since the Bible doesn't say this, but it's debatable whether they should have pushed the envelope with Edom or not. Because of this, they have to take the long route. They got to go way out of the way to get around Edom to get to the promised land. J. Vernon thinks that Moses made a mistake to even ask permission. If the cloud was going that way, his point was they should have just followed the cloud. Now, Edom was not part of Canaan. It wasn't part of the deal that was promised to Abraham. God wasn't going to take their land like the Canaanite land. I think that's important, and maybe that should have been brought out to them too. The God of our fathers, God of Abraham and Isaac, he says your land is secure. We're not taking it. Hindsight's 20/20, I guess.
It may not have been anything either.
Yeah, right.
I have a footnote that refers to Deuteronomy,
Okay.
saying that, "And command the people you are about to pass through the territory of your brothers, the people of Esau, who live in Seir. They will be afraid of you, so be very careful. Do not contend with them, for I will not give you any of their land, no, not so much as a foot for the sole of your feet to tread on, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau."
Right.
So,
God was honoring that part of it.
yeah.
As a grandson of Abraham, he had part of the blessing too. Even though he didn't get quote unquote the blessing. Yeah, that's good. So now they're going to travel to Mount Hor, and some more mischief happens along the way. So verses 23 through 24, after they set out from Kadesh, the entire Israelite community came to Mount Hor. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron at Mount Hor on the border of the land of Edom, "Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will not enter the land I have given the Israelites, because you both rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Take Aaron and his son Eleazar and bring them up to Mount Hor. Remove Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar. Aaron will be gathered to his people and die there." So So it's interesting, he's seen his sister die, now he's gonna see his brother die. And his nephew's gonna take over for Aaron. So I think that's interesting, it's both their sins that come up. Because I think he took Aaron. I don't know if he took Aaron's rod, but Aaron must have been saying, yeah, go for it, Aaron. Moses, you know. And Aaron anyways had a big list of disobediences to choose from. You know, it could have been multiple choice and then at the bottom, all of the above. And we talked, you know, how the Lord was going to kill him after the golden calf incident, but it says, in hindsight, Moses said, I prayed for him, and it didn't happen. So his unbelief and disobedience caused him not to enjoy Canaan. And J. Vernon McGee was saying on this, he says, many Christians do not enjoy the blessing of this life, even though they're saved. But because of their unbelief and sin, they're not going to have the blessing of this life. And Canaan is not so much a type of heaven, I don't think, as it is of blessings in this life. So the changing of the guard then, verses 25 through 29. Eliezer, and we're going to get to an interesting point here about Eliezer, but because of his sin, he now loses this high priesthood, but it goes on to his son. Now it doesn't say how he was buried, but apparently he's buried up on the mountain. Now remember, we're going to get to when Moses dies, it says the Lord buried him. I assume that Moses and Eliezer buried Aaron up there. Probably in an unmarked grave too, so that people wouldn't come up and, you know, and make a church over it, you know, like they do in Israel.
Don't you wonder what could have been going through Aaron's mind as they were going up the mountain? We're going up the mountain, you're gonna die there.
And maybe if he had true faith in God, he's saying, good, I'm worn out.
Yeah, that could be too.
I get to see Yahweh like Moses did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when you know, okay, when you get to the top of the mountain, you're not coming back down. I mean, that's right. I mean, you'd tend to be a little apprehensive.
I mean, I mean, it doesn't say that he knew as they were going up, but he had to have known because, you know, they took his priestly robes to give to his son.
Yeah.
Something's gonna happen there.
Yeah. That they already had them adjusted at the tailor to fit in.
Right.
So now, interesting here, he's mourned for 30 days. Not the traditional 40 days and 40 nights. Remember, Miriam didn't get that. And maybe she did and it's just not recorded. We don't know. So remember, there is a new generation too. His peers have died. So I know my parents said when they were in their 90s, they said, all of our friends are gone.
You know, that's true.
Yeah.
When I look about, and I have a few old friends here, and several new friends,
Yeah.
and new friends where I'm at. But the people that was here, so many of them are gone,
Yeah.
and I see, you know, people going right along, and I'm not going. And I wonder why the Lord keeps me here.
Yeah.
But if it means that I can perhaps have one soul turn to Him, I'm glad to be here.
I remember a cousin of mine, when her mother died, who was a sister of my mom, she thought it was unfair because she says, who's going to pray for all the grandkids?
Their parents are hopefully.
Yeah, right. I think nobody prays for grandkids like grandparents. So, I remember that Erwin Lutzer, Ted said too, when we studied heaven, he said his parents were like 105 and 106. And they've been married, like 70 some years. And he says, I think it's going to last. But they said too, they kidded, they said, all of our friends think we didn't make it.
Yeah, mine was quite long enough,
Yeah.
64 years. And I guess I'm still counting.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is, now, we've talked about this before, that part of the curse of them not believing to go into the land, believing the 10 spies, was everybody over 20 was going to die. Well, I had this question because I had not thought of it before. Eliezer was older. He makes it. So I looked online, and it was like, ask your question thing, and somebody had asked the same question. And this guy, he went into, he says, that's a good question, and he thinks that the Levites weren't included in that. Partly because they had all of these duties, I was thinking, that they had to do. You couldn't just turn, like, if you were in a school, you're not going to just turn it over to everybody, under 20. But, yeah, so, and he thinks that because when they did the census, they didn't include the tribe of Levi. So they weren't included somehow in that curse, which kind of explains things. The Bible doesn't say specifically, it doesn't say everybody's going to die except the tribe of Levi. So that's one explanation. Because Eliezer was, obviously, when he was doing some of these things earlier, he was more than 20. Any comments on that? I think that's a good explanation, or good.
Well, it might be that they were faithful to what they were doing right along.
Right.
And so they didn't really join in this bunch that was rebellious.
Right, right. And most, or 99% of them didn't join in with Korah's rebellion either.
Right.
Right. And when judgment came, they were part of the ones that did the judgment sometimes. So, well, and the other thing too, which you pointed out, which I thought was good, Levi didn't send a spy. If you examine that, there was 12, but remember, Levi didn't really count. How do you get the 12? Well, remember the tribe of Joseph was divided into two, Manasseh and Ephraim. Joshua was from the tribe of Ephraim, so we know that. So that makes up the 12 tribes without Levi. So, a little extra. So, now one of the things that is pointed out here too in some of the writings is, our high priest, remember, is different. Our high priest abides forever. He's not the order of Aaron. He's the order of Melchizedek, and he's a priest forever. Now remember, the Mormons, they have a priesthood, and they have the Aaronic priesthood, and then the really higher ups, they're the priesthood of Melchizedek. The Bible never gives any hint that the priesthood of Melchizedek is for regular men. And the priesthood of Aaron has ended when Christ died on the cross. We don't need a high priest anymore. We have a high priest that knows us, that's experienced, and he's never died. He's never going to die. So then, chapter 21. Why doesn't somebody read verses 1 through 5? So here's one of their first battles here.
When the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev, heard that Israel was coming along the road after him, he attacked the Israelites and captured some of them. Then Israel made this vow to the Lord: if you will deliver these people into our hands, we will totally destroy their cities. The Lord listened to Israel's plea and gave the Canaanites over to them. They completely destroyed them and their towns, so the place was named Hormah. They traveled from Mount Horah along the route to the Red Sea to go around Edom, but the people grew impatient on the way. They spoke against God and against Moses and said, "Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the desert? There is no bread, there is no water, and we detest this miserable food." Then the Lord sent venomous snakes among them, and they bit the people, and many Israelites died. The people came to Moses and said, "We sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. Pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us." So Moses prayed for the people. The Lord said to Moses, "Make a snake and put it up on a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live." So Moses made a bronze snake and put it up on a pole. And when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, he lived.
Right. So, a couple of things there. And interesting, they took prisoners. Now, this wasn't the route that was originally planned. That's, I think, why McGee is saying, they maybe should have just gone through Edom, and that God would have helped them if they had attacked them. Because they're running into problems anyways. And what's happened because of that too, they run out of water again, and that triggers, some more complaints. So you have the 8th Marine. We're kind of counting them up here. So they're saying a couple of things, aren't they? We don't have water, and once again, they're sick of manna.
They've repeated that question several times, have they not?
Yes.
Same thing.
Instead of saying, look how God has provided for us. And there's no indication that the manna wasn't that good. It wasn't like I guess, you're thinking in the back of my mind, okay, you have oatmeal without any flavoring, for 40 years. But the Bible indicates it did taste pretty good. It tasted like coriander seed, and you could make it in different ways. You could grind it up, you could cook it on the grill, So, of course, the bottom line is what they're really doing is it's more than just Moses. They're complaining to the Lord. And as it says, the people spoke out against God and Moses. And it's kind of like, why have you both led us up from Egypt to die in the wilderness? Again, that's a repeated thing too, isn't it? We're going to die in the wilderness. Really? When you look and see all the things you look back on, all of the things that he saved them from. And they're within spitting distance of the promised land now. And apparently, the peers have died. The 20 years and older have pretty much been wiped out. This is the new generation. That's not good. Yeah.
Well, they just experienced a miracle in verses 2 and 3, where they just destroyed those cities.
Yeah.
God gave it into their hands.
They said, you've delivered us,
Yeah, so instead of asking nicely, they totally forgot, apparently, that God had just provided a great miracle for them by leading them through that.
Yeah, along with all the others.
Yeah, and then God sends the snakes and they don't curse God anymore, they cry to him.
Yeah.
So help us, no, we don't like you, help us.
What is the time span between?
Well, I don't know, it doesn't really say. There could have been a little bit of a time span between that and the bronze serpent. Yeah.
Now people forget.
And, yeah, but they have to go by the Red Sea. I mean, it seems like they're really backtracking. I didn't have a map of that, but, so then the venomous or fiery snakes. Now, somebody was saying, what do you mean by fiery? And it could be their coloration, that they might have been brightly colored. It could have been like their bite caused such a fiery, pain, right? They were probably snakes that they were well aware of, but now there's not just one or two, there's a whole bunch of them. And now, this is a weird story, and what I've read is that the rabbis of Jesus' time, and maybe even today, they couldn't figure this one out. What in the world is this story in here? I mean, snakes are not a symbol of anything good. I mean, you go back to the Garden of Eden, but the good thing is, the Bible explains the Bible. And of course, in John 3:14, and we're going to see this in a little bit here, Jesus explains this. He's saying, just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so the Son of Man will be lifted up. The guy I was listening to, he said, the term lifted up many times just means exalted. But the 4 times in the book of John, it means physically lifted up, put on the cross. And even in some of the prophecies, that it talks about that. So that's one thing that you can just, that's nice and clear when Jesus explains it. And so Moses intercedes again for the people. Now, the other place where this is mentioned now is 2 Kings 18:4, and you had that little handout from Character Sketch. And now Hezekiah was a good king, and he really wanted to make things right. His dad was not a really good guy. His son was not a very good guy as far as obedience. So he was kind of clean house. He was going to get rid of all of this stuff that had kind of polluted the land. And like the story speculates, I think, a little bit. The people say, hey, what are we going to do about this? He says, get rid of it. It's just bronze. There's nothing to it. And I just think, this is 700 years after this event in Numbers. 700 years. And the people kept it. And maybe it wasn't a thing of worship to start with, but it morphed into that. And they kept it maybe in some shrine, and people would go there and they figured, this had some magical power that would heal me if I go there. Sometimes, I know, Catholics will go to some place and they, if you created this one saint or the bones of somebody, you're going to get healed or, right, that it had power in itself. And it didn't. That's why Hezekiah said, no, get rid of it. It's just brass, it's just bronze. So apparently it was also quite large. But the problem was it did become an idol. Now we're going to see a little clip. I have shown this, I believe, before. This is from God Provides. And pretty dramatic, I think. And, I was thinking, Nicodemus maybe didn't get it until he was at the foot of the cross. And then the Holy Spirit brought to him, remembering what Jesus had said, if I be lifted up. That was a visual reminder. Yeah, pretty moving, and a hard Bible story to understand without the New Testament. Well, thank you for coming today, and we'll pick it up. Well, one more thing I was just gonna say, we're familiar with this. And I was reading that they're not sure how it got into the Greek culture, but that probably had its origins in this story as well. Yep. Okay, well, thank you, and we'll start again in September sometime, and we'll finish up Numbers and get into Deuteronomy.
A thought I had, and I don't know how valid this is according to scripture, but why would Jesus compare himself to a snake?
Yeah,
And here's the thought. I mean, the Garden of Eden, the snake was the epitome of evil and sin. And when people looked at the snake, when they were all bitten, maybe, that became the representative of, the snake bite itself, and that's why they were healed from it. Jesus on the cross took on all of our sin,
right.
and God looked away from him. We're to look to him, but God looked away from him at that moment because Jesus became sin for us. And so that's what I think is the possible connection.
Like the boy was saying, just look, Mom. Just look.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.